In the movie Dune, the year is 10,191 and humans have discovered many secrets of the universe. They now travel between planets, which are like different countries, ruled by a powerful emperor named Shaddam Carino IV. Each planet has its own leader, called a duke, who follows the orders of the emperor. One such planet is Arrakis, a harsh desert world that holds the only known source of a valuable substance called spice. Spice is important because it keeps people healthy and allows them to travel between planets. So, despite its tough conditions, Arrakis is incredibly valuable. At the start of the movie, a native of Arrakis named Chani explains that their planet has been ruled by the cruel House Harkonnen for a long time. The people of Arrakis suffer under their rule, but they can't fight back because House Harkonnen is supported by the Emperor. Chani fears that even though House Harkonnen has left Arrakis, someone else will come to take their place and continue exploiting their resources. The scene then shifts to another planet called Caladan, ruled by House Atreides. The prince of House Atreides, named Paul, wakes up from a recurring dream. He has breakfast with his mother, Lady Jessica, who is part of a group called the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit are a secretive organization of women with special abilities, including mind control. Lady Jessica has been teaching Paul the ways of the Bene Gesserit for a long time. Because of this, Paul has special abilities, like seeing the future, and others he hasn't fully discovered yet. Paul's father, Duke Leto of House Atreides, has an important meeting with representatives from the Landsraad, the group that represents all the noble houses. Later, they welcome important guests who bring a message from Emperor Shaddam himself. The Emperor, who recently removed House Harkonnen from Arrakis, wants House Atreides to take their place and mine the spice there. Duke Leto is unsure about this decision, but he agrees to follow the Emperor's orders. During the meeting, Jessica notices a member of the Bene Gesserit, Gaius Helen Mahim, watching Paul closely. The meeting ends with Leto sealing the agreement with his ring, confirming they will go to Arrakis. Meanwhile, Atreides' troops prepare to leave for Arrakis, including their bravest soldier, Duncan, who is also Paul's friend. Paul has been having visions of Duncan's death on Arrakis, which worries him. However, Duncan reassures him and departs for Arrakis to prepare for their arrival. Later, Paul and Leto discuss their plans. Leto reveals he has no interest in exploiting the spice for wealth. Instead, he wants to befriend the native people of Arrakis, called the Fremen, and treat them with respect to gain their support. Paul and his friend Halleck practice combat, fearing potential attacks from the resentful Harkonnen when they reach Arrakis. Meanwhile, in the Harkonnen household, the former rulers of Arrakis, Duke Baron and his ruthless nephew Rabban, discuss the departure of their last ship from the planet, now handed over to the Atreides. Rabban criticizes the Emperor for favoring the Atreides, but Baron reveals that the Emperor is actually plotting their downfall out of jealousy for their rising influence. The Emperor plans to eliminate Duke Leto and his men while they're mining spice on Arrakis. Back on Caladan, Jessica wakes Paul up and takes him to see a doctor. It's revealed that Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mahim has learned of Paul's visions and wants to test if he's the one they've been waiting for. Paul undergoes a test of impulse control, which he barely passes. Jessica explains that the Bene Gesserit, a secretive organization, has been manipulating politics and bloodlines for years, aiming to produce a man who can save Arrakis from exploitation. Paul, unwittingly, proves to be this chosen one, the Messiah of Arrakis. The next day, Leto, Paul, Jessica, and their troops depart for Arrakis and are greeted by the native Fremen, who believe Paul to be their Messiah. Paul remains skeptical. Later, he learns about the dangers of sandworms on Arrakis and narrowly escapes an assassination attempt by a hidden Harkonnen soldier. Meanwhile, Baron meets with Mahim, who is aware of the Emperor and Baron's plot against the Atreides but can't intervene. She asks Baron to spare Jessica and Paul, but he plans to feed them to sandworms instead. Back on Arrakis, a meeting reveals that the Harkonnens sabotaged the equipment, setting the Atreides up for failure. Paul reunites with Duncan, who has been living among the Fremen, and learns about their survival techniques and their leader, Stilgar. Leto tries to negotiate with Stilgar, promising not to harm their people, but Stilgar remains wary. The next day, Leto's team inspects the spice sands they'll be mining. They encounter a Freeman and an Imperial ecologist named Dr. Liet Kynes, who checks the integrity of Leto's sand suit, designed to recycle sweat and urine into drinking water. While inspecting Paul's suit, Kynes notices his familiarity with Freeman customs, leading her to believe he's their prophesied Messiah. They head out to inspect the spice sands and witness 2 sandworms approaching the spice harvester. A rescue attempt fails, leaving 21 crew members trapped. Leto acts quickly, ordering everyone to bring aircraft closer to save the crew just in time. During the rescue, Paul smells spice and has a vision. He returns home feeling dizzy, which the doctor attributes to allergies. Paul insists it was more, claiming to have seen a Fremen girl and sensing Jessica's pregnancy, though she dismisses it. Meanwhile, an army prepares to attack the Atreides, led by the deadly Sardaukar. On Arrakis, the doctor gives Paul medicine that will make him unconscious, part of a deal with Baron. Leto and Jessica are also drugged, but Leto remains awake. The Sardaukar attack, catching the Atreides off guard. Despite their outnumbering and superior weapons, the Sardaukar quickly overwhelm the Atreides. While Leto is injured, the doctor reveals that Baron has kidnapped his wife, forcing him to comply. He removes Leto's ring and places a poisonous tooth in his jaw. Meanwhile, the Sardaukar abduct Paul and Jessica, intending to throw them into the desert. Paul and Jessica, using her mind manipulation abilities, manage to escape their captors and find a survival kit left by the doctor. Elsewhere, Leto, unconscious, is brought before Baron and stripped. The doctor pleads for Leto's wife's freedom but is killed instead. Realizing he's trapped, Leto triggers the poison gas in his tooth, killing himself and everyone in the room. Paul and Jessica set up camp and mourn Leto's death, finding solace in his ring. Duncan seeks help from Kynes to find them. In Baron's palace, the soldiers find Baron attached to the ceiling, miraculously unharmed by Leto's gas. Meanwhile, Paul experiences visions of a future holy war while under the influence of spice, causing him distress. Jessica comforts him, and he eventually assumes his father's title as Duke of Atreides, wearing Leto's ring. They are discovered by Duncan, who acknowledges Paul as the Lord Duke, and are taken to safety by Kynes. The place they find refuge in is an old ecological station meant to bring water to Arrakis, which could have turned the planet into a paradise if successful. Before the ecological project could finish, the discovery of spice in the sand shifted everyone's focus. The Sardaukar army eventually attacks their safe zone, with Duncan sacrificing himself to save Jessica and Paul, despite Paul's foreseen vision of his death. They manage to escape, with Jessica and Paul fleeing in a 2-person aircraft while Kynes plans to meet them later with help from the Fremen. However, Kynes is captured by Sardaukar soldiers, but she summons a sandworm to eliminate them. Paul evades enemy aircraft by maneuvering through a sandstorm, fooling them into thinking they're dead. Meanwhile, Baron, bathing in healing medicines, learns of Leto's demise and orders Rabban to continue harvesting spice and eradicate the Fremen. Paul and Jessica crash land but survive, donning desert suits to seek out the Fremen for aid. Paul's knowledge of Fremen ways helps them avoid sandworms as they trek, with Paul experiencing visions urging him onward. As they rest, they hear a sandworm approaching but are saved by the timely use of a thumper, hinting at potential Fremen aid. Surrounded by Stilgar, the Fremen leader, and his group, tensions rise as they initially plan to kill Paul and Jessica for their bodily fluids. However, Stilgar recognizes Paul as the prophesied Messiah, despite skepticism from others. Jessica proves her strength by holding a man hostage, earning respect. They journey to Tab, where Paul's fate will be decided. There, the girl from Paul's visions, Chani, appears. Jamis challenges Paul to a duel, a Fremen tradition that ends in death. Reluctant to kill, Paul ultimately defeats Jamis but struggles with taking a life. As they head to Tab with Jamis's body, Paul glimpses a man riding a massive sandworm, symbolizing the beginning of something greater. The movie concludes, hinting at sequels to come.